Newsroom. All good things come to an end. Summer well and truly over Tuesday for more than 12 million French school kids and their 850,000 teachers. Teachers who recently helped elect the country's first socialist president in a long while. François Hollande this Monday promising a more than reform, a quote, refounding of the French education system. To meet that promise, well, he's got his work cut out. The current state school system dates back to the 1880s with a strong accent on math, literature, and even for the baccalaureate exam, philosophy. The long hours start young and leave little time for extracurricular activities. Moreover, surveys claim French schools and universities are now lagging behind in preparing students for a multilingual, globalized world. Oh, and there's also, of course, the issue of the cost. The US, the UK, and others also taking a closer look on how to improve education when state coffers are empty. Today in the France 24 debate, what do the French know? And with us, a woman who's lived to tell the tale after surviving the French education system, the Sunday Telegraph's Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. How are you?
Very well.
All right. And, with us as well, Adrian Covington, principal at the American section of the Lycée International in the Paris suburb of Saint-Germain-en-Laye. Jean-Rémy Girard, a little bit further out, is in a high school in Les Yvelines, where you teach French, but you're also a representative of the SNALC Teachers Trade Union. Thank you for being with us. And Andreas Schleicher, who tracks education at the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate, where, of course, you can always weigh in on the conversation on Facebook and also on Twitter, where you can find us at François F24. Now, over the weekend came the news that unemployment in France had topped the symbolic 3 million people out of a job mark. That's the highest in 13 years. Speaking this Monday at the Yuri Gagarin Middle School in the working-class Paris suburb of Trappes, the French president promised there'll be no cost-cutting when it comes to education.
More than 22,000 posts will be open to external candidates in 2013 to replace all the teachers who've retired. In the current budgetary environment, that's a particularly strong decision.
A particularly strong decision to create more jobs at a time when, well, everyone's asking the French to tighten their belts?
It's not really creating more jobs, it's just creating the jobs we need. The precedent government didn't want to replace people who were
retired.
Old, who retired. And so now François Hollande is just doing what everybody should do, put teachers in front of the pupils.
He made in that same speech, Andreas Schleicher, he stated the case that the way to bring down unemployment is through education. So is he making the right move here?
What's very clear is they're highly educated in France. The highly skilled people don't have any difficulties. They actually have growing and improving life prospects. The people who bear the brunt of the economic crisis are the people with poor skills. That's very clear in France. It's very clear elsewhere.
Very clear elsewhere, but in France it's a particular case. You were saying how the indicators show that the French are starting to lag behind the others.
Yeah, absolutely. If you take global comparisons like the OECD PISA study, you see that France is lagging behind and falling further behind. France used to be one of the top performing education systems and is now barely at the OECD average in terms of the preparedness of students for tomorrow's world. That's a real worry for the future, for the long term.
You mentioned that report. What do the French get for their money? Well, the OECD's big report comes out every three years. This time surveyed 36 nations. And the French, for all their intellectual values, near the back of the class in that report. Tell us a little bit what was the composite? How did you come up with the numbers here?
Yeah, actually, we test students. We actually look at to what extent students can actually solve real-world problems, to what extent they can apply mathematics, science, reading, and those kind of foundation skills. And then we look at what are the kind of factors that drive those kinds of results. And basically, when you look at France, for example, the results are average. There are large social disparities. That is, social background from parents has a particularly strong impact on success, which is not what you see in Northern Europe, which is not what you see in Canada or Asia. And I would actually attribute less of that to money or teaching posts or any of those kinds of things. That the resources only explain about 20% of the performance variation that we observe across countries. What really drives those differences is the quality of people that you attract to teaching, the kind of work organization that you provide to let actually people at the front line do their job, and they're great teachers in France. I mean, providing them with an environment as you find it in Finland or other high-performing systems, those things matter probably more than just numbers or study hours or teacher pay.
What is it then, if it's more?
Well, I mean, high-performing systems have very high aspirations. They really aim for the best. They provide very, very strong support to students. They have no tolerance for failure. They have a work organization that is much more a professional environment rather than the kind of industrial work organization that you still find in French schools, where, you know, you standardize everything. People go to the same school, to the same class, do the same kind of program. If you look to Finland in Europe today, you have a high degree of personalization in learning experience. Students decide and learn according to their talents. Teachers understand that ordinary students have extraordinary talents and really individualized learning approach. It's a very, very different approach.
All right, standardize everything. I think that's a key word. Adrian Covington, first of all, school year beginning, have you taken your vitamins?
Yeah, yeah, I'm stocking up, definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Do you feel that the reputation of the French education system is this huge monolith where the orders come from above? Do you feel a frustration sometimes that things are standardized and rigorous and rigid?
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting. Yes, I do. Although I have to admit, I come from a very different, I would even say rarefied atmosphere. Being fortunate enough to be a teacher at the Lycée International, the American section gets to, you know, handpick its students and all of that. However, that said, I do work, one of our campuses is in a very public institution, so I do get to see what's actually going on in the trenches, as it were. Top down, yes, I would say so. And it's actually very interesting what Andres has been saying, because I find that in my own 17 years in the system, in the French system and a bilingual and bicultural system, I do find that there's a tremendous change that has actually evolved and occurred. 17 years ago, for example, and this was unbelievable for an American coming from an American system. In the U.S., if you told people you were a teacher, they sort of looked askance and would politely sort of duck out and walk away. In France, I was stunned when I would tell people I was a teacher, and the, you know, amazement and respect that I got. I can't say that that is 100% necessarily the case now. And unfortunately, we are in a situation of transition. We do have to, you know, deal with the standardization issues and all that's going on right now. And the problem is, the kids aren't the same. We want standardized kids for a world that is rapidly, in my opinion, evolving into one of non-standardization. So.
Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, we were joking in the introduction about you surviving the French system. Did you feel that you were they tried to standardize you at the time?
Oh, yes. And I had a basis for comparison, because at 11, I was also shipped off to an English school for a bit, so that I had both the experience of both systems. And the French have got tall puppy syndrome. You know, they don't like people to be different. They do not like people to be original. You are supposed to be absolutely within a framework. And you get... Every now and then you did get marks for being different, but by and large, and I would say 90% of the experience was, we're not really interested in different kids. We want kids that get the grades that we want to give them. Now, you know, this was a long time ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and certainly lots of things have changed. But I still see there's no premium there's no upside to being original in this country, because you know, the best jobs go to people who graduate from the grandes écoles, not the universities. And the grandes écoles absolutely favor an approach that is expected from people to be like those who came before them, and to go absolutely to be delivered into a network that's going to serve them all their lives, and within an organization that's very hierarchical, whether in the French civil service or in French private companies. And so you're supposed not to make waves. And I think it's to the detriment of children developing in a different or original way. That was something I remembered very well.
Well, you teach French, that you want originality and creativity, don't you?
Yeah, of course we want that. But we cannot do something good if we we've got bad conditions for teaching. And in France, we got a real problem with teaching conditions.
And what Adrian was saying about the profession of teacher doesn't get the same respect that it once did?
No, it doesn't get the same respect now. We passed the last 10 years hurting the teachers, saying they weren't working hard, saying they could work more, they had to work more. And teachers are nowadays very tired people for the most of them. They work hard. Nobody sees that because everybody thinks they only work when they're in front of children, which is not true. They have now a lot of meetings, a lot of talking, a lot of debating. And we've got a problem with the French system. The French system, in fact, is a problem because we invent many things. We think it will be better, but in fact, it just causes reunions, and it's just silly.
So when Andreas Schleicher talks about the standardization and this monolithic way of doing things, the real reform to make it less standardized, would you be in favor or against that?
But the problem, we are standardized. In fact, now we've got what we call le collège unique since 1975, something like that. And we need more diversification, I think. In middle school, yeah. We ask everybody to do the same. And in the same classes, you've got in the same class the top pupil and someone who cannot read. And you have to teach them both at the same time, 30 pupils in front of you. 1 hour, what can you do?
But Andreas Schleicher, that must be the case in all the countries you survey.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of stratification, dividing students up between better and worse students is actually not the answer. There are a lot of countries that have tried that. My country, Germany, has done that for years and with very bad experience. The answer is really personalization. The answer is to provide an environment where actually teachers can respond individually to students. And the answer
is... So what you're saying is hire more teachers?
Not necessarily, actually. It's if you have to make the choice between a smaller class and the better teacher, choose the better teacher. That's a very, very clear evidence on that. But I do think what it means is provide also more flexible work environments, develop better career options for teachers, more career diversity to make this a really attractive job. If you ask yourself, in high-performing nations on our PISA test, you get 10 applications for every teaching job. Everybody in the population wants to become a teacher. It's one of the most prestigious occupations. And this is because the work is defined in a way that really becomes attractive to people. It's not because of pay or other kind of...
And Elisabeth Moutet, is part of this politics, we know that school teachers, as a general rule, vote socialist. Did the previous government, the Conservatives, sort of let school go fallow because they knew they weren't going to get any votes there anyway?
I think, saying that they let the schools go fallow is, first of all, you've got the huge inertia of something that was the French education system, was once described as being, employing more people than General Motors and slightly less than the Red Army at the height of the Bolshevik regime. So it's a bit like the Titanic. It takes a great many years to just move a bit. And I think many things are different. I mean, I remember very well, my good teachers. I remember their names. I remember what the classes were like, and this is a very long time ago. We all know by personal experience, what happens to a child when the child finds an inspiring teacher and suddenly discovers something. So that's really what you're aiming at. But the thing is, there's a mythology in France that everybody is equal. We say égalité, liberté, fraternité.
It's written on the schools.
And so everybody goes to the same classes. And when I started off, actually, it wasn't quite like that. So you had more higher achieving classes, and you had lower achieving classes, and then everybody said you can't have children who are already sort of given up for lost so early on, and therefore everybody must learn at the same rhythm, and that is quite crazy. So what happens is the parents in this country know perfectly well that even though on paper every single public school in France is equal, by public I mean state schools, But we perfectly know that, you know, a collège somewhere in the Seine-Saint-Denis is not going to be like Lycée Henri IV in Paris. So either you're a member of the club, you're a parent, you're educated. Very often you are yourself either a teacher or in the civil service, and you know which school you want to get the kids to get in. You know what kind of languages, for instance, they have to study. If they want to start with German and then study Chinese, Henri IV is going to be a much more interesting proposition. And then if you really sort of take this seriously, you will try and live as close to those places as you can. All of this, people know about it. Every now and then you get, you know, there's a combination of rumor, of facts that people pass on. If you're outside the system, you don't even know it exists.
You don't even know it exists.
So the inequality is in fact...
And that gap between those who overachieve and underachieve is
yes.
the French ranking 33rd out of 36, according to your survey. Now, for all their efforts, not just teachers, by the way, work hard, pupils, among those who spend the most time in school, well more than the likes of Japan and Germany. Adrian Covington, we know the next reform is going to mean that younger kids are going to be going back to school on Wednesdays. Right now they have the day off for extracurricular activities.
Right.
How do you get the kids to learn in less time, basically?
To learn in less time. Well, it's a good question, and it's a perpetual one for those of us in the teaching profession.
Do you feel that the French are more than Americans too much in school?
French kids too much in school? Well, you know, the thing is, I have to say, first of all, speaking really both as a professional but also as a mom who chose to raise both her daughters here in France and to go to a French school with, of course, the American section option. I have to say, first of all, too much, but let's remember fundamentally that this isn't a system, this is an educational system which has always been the pride of the nation and actually does indeed create incredibly well-informed and intelligent kids with an amazing amount of general knowledge. Now, of course, the question is too much. Well, the days are very long, I have to say.
Too much math class, for instance?
Well, I'm not probably coming from me being not very gifted in math, I could say that for sure, with all due respect to my colleagues in mathematics. But I think actually there is a downside. The day is long, and in the old days that used to mean that was good because the kids were learning and because they didn't have time to fool around and get into trouble or mischief. Nowadays, the problem is, as we're looking at this, and I think the fundamental question here is, are we training kids, are we creating kids who are going to be creative enough and daring enough for the world of tomorrow, for the kind of world that is being created as we speak? And for that, I'd have to say that I'm a little apprehensive, although I don't have a firm answer here, but I'm a little apprehensive because it's true, a long day does cut into extracurricular activities, places where children have a chance to grow, self-development, self-awareness, self-discovery, and things like that. So, sure, you do have to step back and ask yourself, is the long day really one that makes the most sense, the best sense for the children?
Do you agree?
I think we've got a major problem in France, and nobody spoke about it. No, it's the basics. Today, we've got a real problem in teaching the basics to children. The reading, writing, and calculating. We had.
We're going to pick up on that point because we have to take a quick break. But when we come back, we'll be talking more about whether or not the French are or whether the French education system is worth it as it currently stands. You're watching the France 24.